Okay, so I'm adding this section just to relax a little bit because in a few minutes we're gonna talk about some other complicated stuff. So, I just want to relax. And we're gonna talk about dynamic headers or maybe dynamic information. So let me tell you what I want to do, and then of course, we're gonna tell you how to do it. So what I want to do, I want to go to the About Us right here. I want to go to this section, and on this section, every time I load it, I want to change the color of the header. I know I told you it was going to be dumb, but this is something that you might do on every implementation. So when I load this, I only want to change the header on this one, on the About Us. On all the other sections, I don't want to do it. I want just to keep the default one. But on this one, we want to add a class. So let's go in steps. I'm going to go to the static and the CSS, and I'm just going to add a rule, add a style. So I'm going to say header, just like, we have it right here. I'm going to say header, and I'm going to add a class. I'm going to call it sky blue. And on this one, we're just going to change the color, maybe to sky blue or not. So now when I load this section, the About Us, I want to be passing that CSS, that class name. Okay, so maybe you're thinking, oh, okay, so since we are rendering the header from the main layout, the one we have right here at the top, let me find it, main layout, we could pass the props. So yeah, well, the main layout receives, of course, the props, but if we go to the About page, which is the About Us, we don't have a reference to the main layout. We just get some content, maybe we have this, we could remove this, but it doesn't matter. So, we get no reference to the main layout. So how are we going to tell the main layout to change the color if we don't have a direct reference? So that's the problem. Okay, so how can we pass data between, between this and the app_.js? This is the one that contains the main layout. Well, what we do it with the, let me just open the About Us again. We do it with the getInitialProps. Whenever we use getInitialProps, whatever we get right here will pass through the _.js. And at the end, this file, what it will do, it will inject the props back again. So, okay, so let me just begin with this. I'm going to say static. And of course, we go to the get initial and then props. And right now, we don't need anything inside. So the only thing I need right here is just a property, just a variable that says, the style that we want to add. I'm going to say header style, and this one it's equal to sky blue. So remember that the getInitialProps, at the end, it needs to return something. So let me do it correctly. I'm going to do return, and we need to return just the header style. That's it. So now this property, when we load this component, this property will be passed to the _app.js. So if I go right here at the bottom and I do maybe a console log, and remember that when this happens, we are injecting the page props, and the page props are pretty much this. So we have it available inside page props. So if I do console log page props and I go right here and say that I want to access the header style, we should be getting the value. So let me just reload the application. We are getting undefined. So right now, of course, since I reloaded, we get the sky blue. If I go out and go back again, we are still getting the sky blue. Now notice that for the other ones, we are getting undefined. If I go to contact, we get it undefined because, of course, we are not passing anything through getInitialProps. But for this one, we kind of get it. So now what we need to do, we need to be passing this to the main layout. So I'm going to comment this, I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to go to the main layout. And now I'm going to say that now we have a new property called header style. And this is going to be equal to, header style. That's it. And I can do something better. Let me just do something else. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say that I want to create a variable. And I'm going to say header and then style. This is the property. Okay. So this one is going to be equal to the page props and the header style. Now on this one, we're going to do a ternary. If I do have a value on this one, what I want to store inside this variable is whatever we get back from this property. If not, this is going to be nothing. And the reason I'm doing this is because, if you remember, we get undefined. So later we're going to be passing that class. So if we put, for example, class name or something like this, is going to be passed as undefined, right? So we don't want to do that. We just want to provide an empty class name. All right, so it's safer that way. So right now we are passing whatever thing we get inside header style as a property. So now what we need to do, we need to go to the main layout and tell the application to use it. So if I go to the main layout, we notice that we are already passing whatever prop we are getting from the underscore app, included the header style. So we don't need to, manually say that we want to be passing that prop. We are already getting this. So now we need to go to the header. So now the header is going to receive that prop. So the only thing we need to do is to go here and say, I want to add a class name. And in this case, it's going to be inside props and then header and then style. So if we get nothing, this one is going to be equal to nothing. But if we get something, we get the sky blue. If I go to contact, we are back to default. So, really, really cool. So let me add one more thing. Let's say that I want to go to the user. And what I want to do that every time we really load this component, this route, we want to be passing some very specific, data. Let's say data, why not? So we could take pretty much the same approach. Since we can pass whatever data we want into that component, we can do it as well from different places and not just for the, the style. So let me go to the index of users. All right, so right now we have a variable called user. I'm going to create another one called, page configs, whatever, page configs. And this one, it's just going to say maybe admin because, this is an admin page. And I'm going to be passing the page configs as well. So now, of course, the underscore app.js will get the page configs. So, we take the same approach. I'm going to say const, and I'm going to say page, and then configs. And this one is going to be equal to page props, then page configs. And if we, of course, get nothing, we are not going to do nothing. If not, we're going to, if we, of course, get something, we're going to do pretty much this. And if not, I'm going to say maybe just null. Why not? Just null. So now, of course, what we can do, we can go maybe to the main layout, since the main layout will receive the page configs, right? And tell it to do something. I'm going to go and say page configs equal page configs. And we could, do it here like this. It's a little bit better. All right. So now the main layout gets the page configs. So on the page configs, we could do whatever we want. For example, I could change maybe the title. If we are on the whatever in a route on the application, you're just going to display my awesome app. But maybe on inside users, I want to add a different title, right? So, we could do it from here. So we can say, okay, so if we get page props and we do have page configs, remember that if we don't have this, it's undefined, page configs. I'm going to open and close, we're going to do something. If not, we're going to do something else. And we can even say that, maybe page configs, it's equal to, admin or something like that. Depending of course, what you get in your application. So of course, if you're getting the admin, what you're going to show, it's maybe a different title. In this case, by default, I'm saying my awesome app. And then the other one is going to say, welcome to your dashboard or, something like that. User, page, admin. Yeah, that sounds cool. So if I reload the application, we get user page admin. That's what we expect. If we go to contact, we get the other title. So you can pretty much use the same concept for, whatever you want. Let me just copy this. And I'm going to go right here at the bottom. You could maybe add a script. Maybe you know that when you go to your user section, you need to load a JavaScript file or, you need to add maybe a meta tag or something like that. You can still do it with this. So for example, I'm going to go and say null. And at the top, if we are on the admin, on an admin section, I'm going to say I want to add a script. And on this one, I'm just, going to do on alert. I am on the admin, whatever, doesn't matter. So if we reload it, of course, we get I am on the admin. And if I go to a different one, nothing happens. Back to users, we get the script. So again, this is a very, nice feature to have in your application because you will need it. If you go to maybe an admin or maybe maybe to the contact and you need to add some additional scripts or maybe some additional styles, you can do it this way. Right, so on this section, we're going to talk about API resources and handling all that kind of data. So most likely in your application, you will have API routes, right? So if the user, if it's authenticated or not, maybe it's going to make a request to get some information from a database, or maybe from, maybe a JSON file from your server. You want to create a route that, just that does that. It's just going to listen for that and return something. And of course, since right now we have a connection with Express, we're working with Next and Express, we can create our own route that listens for that route. And then, of course, we do whatever we need to do, whether it's fetching something from a database or returning some JSON data. So again, we can do it. There's no restriction between Next and Express. So, okay, so let's try it right now. I'm going to create a variable called Axios, because we are going to make a net request to JSON placeholder. So I'm going to require open and close, and I'm going to require Axios. We're going to make that request. All right. So what we want to do, we want to make a GET request to an API resource. So I'm going to go right here and just create a route. So I'm going to say server, of course. I'm going to say GET because we want to listen for a GET request. And of course, what we will do, and this of course it depends on in your application. Most of the times the API routes starts with API or V2 or whatever is that you want to use. In this case, I'm just going to use users API users. Then of course, after we get this, we run a function. We do get a request, and usual stuff. We get the response. So what we want to do, we want to reach the server and get some data. So I'm going to go to JSON placeholder, and I want to get maybe a link where I can make a request. I'm going to bring users, since we are working with users. So I'm going to copy this URL. You should do the same. And I'm going to go right here at the bottom. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a request to Axios, and I'm going to do a GET request. Where we want to go? Well, we want to go to this URL, and then of course we are going to get a promise, and when it gets resolved, we're going to grab the response and we're going to do something. What are we going to do? Well, we return whatever we get back from that response, right? And from JSON. And it's actually, we return a response from our server, and we send a JSON response. With what? Well, with the response.data. That's it. We are just creating a very simple network request. We are getting some data from JSON placeholder, and then we send the response to, of course, our server with that data we get back from the server. Is that simple. So I'm gonna kill the server. Just gonna kill it. I'm gonna do clear, and I'm gonna start it again. npm run dev. All right. Now, of course, I'm not gonna do it from our application because we will need to create a new route, and that takes a while. So I'm going to use Postman. Now, if you don't know what Postman is, Postman, it's a free tool. You can go to Postman, something like that, and you can get the tool. And with this tool, what we can do, we can make requests, and we can analyze what's going on with that request. We can do get, post, and everything else. So if you're interested on server side, which is what we are doing, you need to use Postman. It is a very common tool. Now, when you download it, you don't need to sign in. Notice that says sign in, create an account, and whatever. If you go all the way to the bottom, it says, it's kind of hidden. Skip signing in and take me straight to the app. So that's what we want to do. So as you can see, I use it a lot. So, okay. So on this one, what we can do, we can make a request to our own location, which is localhost, API, and users, and we should be getting this response. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a GET request. Notice, what we can do. And of course, it's going to be HTTP, and I'm just going to use this one. So, okay. So when we go, we're going to go to API and users. So when we go here, we should be getting a response, right? That's what we want to do. Okay. So I'm going to send it, and we should be getting something. Maybe we are not getting anything. Most of the times when the server, it's kind of a frozen like that, it's because something is wrong. So it's API users. And okay, we are getting it. Maybe this one, the JSON placeholder was a little bit slow, but we are getting it now. So okay, so we get the response. And so in your application, maybe on an Axios, our application, if we make a request, we should be getting this response. You know, that works. So okay, we can get data from server. What happens if I had some JSON data on maybe a file, you know? So I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna create just a file, just a dumb file called users.json. I'm gonna put it on the root. If you create one, you can put it whatever you want, doesn't matter. I'm gonna copy some dumb JSON information and get here pretty much to users, pretty simple. So I'm gonna go here at the top, and I'm just gonna require this JSON data. So I'm gonna just send that JSON as a response. We don't need to go maybe to a server. So I'm gonna say user and then JSON, and this one, of course, we need to require it first. So I'm gonna say that / and it's users or user dot JSON. All right, JSON. Okay. So of course, now what we're gonna do, since we are loading this, we're gonna send that as a response. So I'm gonna go right here at the top, on the bottom, and whenever we make this request, we just send the JSON response. It's that simple. So I'm gonna say return, and then return a response with the JSON and whatever we get inside user.json. So you don't always need to create a server just to return some dumb information. If you want to write, of course, a JSON file, you will need to take a different approach. But in this case, you know, just for this example, this works. I'm going to send it, and you know, we get a different response because we need to restart the server. I'm going to show you a trick in a few sections, because every time you make a change on the server, you need to restart it, and you know, that sucks. So I'm gonna send it, and we get the JSON response, right? So in the future, we're gonna add MongoDB to the course and of course to our project. And you know, with MongoDB, it's gonna be pretty much the same logic. So Next will not stand in front of Express and MongoDB. We just use it as an Express route, and that's it. Okay. So now we want to go to the next thing. What happens if the user, of course, needs to make a request to this whatever API route, and this route, it's restricted. You know, the user needs to be logged in order to access. In this case, notice that I'm just making a request from whatever, and everything works. So, you know, the restriction we get in our application, it's not really kicking in because this is a separate route. We are doing this on Express, not on Next. So Next, of course, it's not, and you know, it will not interfere with that, and it will just let you move forward. So what we need to do, and we're going to do it on the next section, we need to create pretty much what we did to recreate what we did with the app Auth. Of course, we are not going to do all of this. It's just a tiny, tiny code. But we need to pretty much do the same logic. We need to go here, bring the data from Auth, bring the token, decode it, and make sure that the user is, it's correct. The token is correct. And if it's correct, we're going to let the user move forward and get some JSON data or whatever. And we're going to do that with middlewares. And if you don't know about middlewares, don't worry, we're going to do it on the next section. So let's go to the next one and start with this. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to authenticate the routes. So we're going to do it with middlewares. That's the, you know, the easy answer. So if you don't know what a middleware is just a function that it's going to do something and decide if we can move forward or not. For example, right here, we've got our route, the get API users. And what I want to do, I want to, allow only authenticated users to move forward. So the middleware is gonna sit right here. Right now, we're gonna create just a function or something that will do just that. So when we get a get request, could be a post or whatever request from a URL, what we're gonna do, we're gonna go and execute this before doing this. That's why it's a middleware. It acts in the middle of something. First, we'll listen to the request, then we run the middleware. If the user is not authenticated, and of course we can handle that from the middleware, we're gonna not move forward. And if the user is has a good token, we just move forward and return the response. That's it. For now, I'm just gonna delete this, and we're gonna create a middleware. I'm gonna create a new file for this. Later, when we reach the practice section, we're going to create a much complex, middleware and directory where we're going to be putting everything from the server. And we're going to create our middleware right here. Now, maybe you're asking again, why not using this, this app Auth? Now, you always need to remember that when we work with Next and Express, you get a snake with 3 heads. First is the server side. When we render our application, remember that this one loads on the server first. That's the first head. Then we get the client side, which is everything loads in the client. That's the second head. And since we are using Express, we have a third head. We have a third face. So since they are not very much related, we need to handle this from the Express side of things. That's why we need to do this. Okay, so in our server Auth, we're going to create the middleware. And this is just a function, I'm going to call it Auth and then middleware. Just, something simple. And this is going to be just a function that at the end is going to do something. Since we're going to use it on a different file, we need to export it, and we need to do module exports, and we're going to export the Auth middleware. All right, simple enough. So whenever you create a middleware, you always get the request, the common request, the response, and you get an additional thing that it's called next. We're going to talk about this in a second. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to check if the user has the proper tokens, if the token is correct. So for now, I'm just going to create a variable, and I'm going to say fake response. Just like that, just that, fake response. Response, there we go. All right, sorry for that. So this fake response is going to be equal to the actual request we're going to do to auth and everything else. And this, for example, is going to be true or false. Is the user token correct? Yes. So this will return true. And if it's the token is not right, we're going to return false. Right now, again, we are just learning. So I'm going to get a fixed or fake response. In this case, we'll always return true. The user token it's correct. Okay, so what do we do now? So after we do the check with auth and we check if the token is correct, we need to decide if we let the user move forward or not. So I'm going to be checking this fake response. If the response is true, it means that the token is correct. So what am I going to do? I'm going to call that next function we have at the top. So this next, what it does is going to move forward to the next execution of the code. Since our middleware sits right here, whenever we do next, the middleware is going to go and say, okay, I want to move forward, so I'm going to execute whatever code we have right here. And this is, of course, if the token is correct. Now, if the token is not correct, instead of moving forward to the next code, we're going to do something else. I'm just going to return a response. So I'm going to return a response of status 401, which is unauthorized, and then I'm going to send the response. So this one, of course, knows that the token is not correct. So instead of just going to the MongoDB or whatever, it's just going to, exit with unauthorized. So, okay, so how do we use the middleware? So pretty simple. First, we need to include it right here because it's a middleware. And since we want to use it, we need to bring it. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say const, and I'm going to call it server auth. We're going to change this logic in a few minutes because for what we need to do, we need to change it a little bit. But for now, this one, it's good as an example. So I'm going to require, and I'm going to require that file, that /, and I believe we call it serve and then auth. All right. Okay, so now since I'm exporting this variable auth middleware, this is what I need to bring. And this is going to be the second in the chain. So I'm going to save serve auth, and I need to bring the auth middleware. So now whenever we make a request, we're going to go through here first. And if this one decides that we can move forward, we just move forward. If I change it right now, we get it to true. I'm going to change it to true. I was testing it, but that's okay. So now, of course, we made some changes on the server file, so we need to restart the server. Don't forget that. So, okay. So I'm going to go and make a request. I'm going to send it, and okay, we are passing because we are setting everything to true. So the user has good tokens. So we get the information. What happens if I change it to false? I'm going to change it to false. And I'm going to, of course, save it. I'm going to reload the application. I'm going to send it and I get OK. Of course, I need to do this. All right, so let's try again. I'm going to send it again. And okay, we get a 400 of unauthorized, and it's because the token it's not correct. So this is the way we do to, of course, check if the user is it's authenticated or not. And of course, we're going to do much more than this on the next couple sections. So let's go to the next one, and let's start creating the function to authenticate the user. Okay, so now we need to validate the token. And I got to tell you, this is going to be much easier than the app Auth we just did. All of this, it's going to be much easier, don't worry. So let me just close all this. We are not going to need it. So before we move forward, we need to first get the token, right? So we make a request from here. We're going to do it from here first. We need to access the cookies of our application. We get it right here and get this value. Since, of course, when we make a request, we do have access to the request, and we have access to the request right here, we can enter the request and get the cookies. That's the first thing, getting the token. Then, of course, what we need to do, we need to decode it, and then we need to go to Auth to make sure that the token is correct. And of course, again, this is going to be much easier, and we need to install a couple of dependencies before we can do this. Okay, so if I go right here to the web, the first thing we need to do is we need something to help us decode the token. So if we say express and then JWT, the first result you're going to get it's Auth O, and notice that starts with Auth O, and express JWT. So if I go right here, it says that this is a middleware. You know, we can install to a module we can install to, of course, get and validate token, decode the token. So we just need to do that. I'm gonna copy, and you will need to do the same, of course. I'm gonna do clear and npm install express JWT. I'm gonna do -- safe because this is gonna go to you. So everything was installed. I'm not gonna run the server again because we need to install one more thing. This one will help us to decode the token. Then what we need to do, we need to make sure with Auth that the token is correct. So for this one, we need to install a different thing. So I'm going to go to the web again, and I'm going to say node JW key set and then RSA. And again, the first result is going to say a library to retrieve RSA public keys. This is what we need to do. Now, if you scroll down, of course, here you get the install. I'm going to copy. And at the bottom on the usage, it says integrations are also provided with, and you get, different things. This is the one what we're going to use, the express JWT. So if you go right here, you get some information of, how you can use it. But don't worry, I'm gonna show you how to use it right now. The only thing we need to do now is to install it. So we've already got the -- safe. So I'm gonna press enter and wait until this is done. Okay, so everything was installed. So now what we need to do is we need to use it. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna delete all of this. And if you go to the node JW key set, right here again, it says that, let me just move forward here. And if I scroll down, it says, well, maybe I'm not finding it. Oh, here, sorry for that. It says express JWT. This is the example you need. So we are pretty much going to do the same thing here. We just need to do this. Right here, they give you an example with app.use. So this pretty much is a middleware. It's a way to use kind of an inline middleware. So this is what we will need to do. Now, first, we need to include what we just installed, all right? So I'm going to say const, and then first I'm going to bring the JWT, and this one it's require, and we require express JWT. All right. The next one is JW key set, and I'm going to call it client. You could call this whatever you want. So I'm going to say require, and we need to require JW keys RSA. All right. Now I'm going to do this directly. I'm going to say export, and I'm going to create an auth JWT. And this one is going to be equal to pretty much the same thing than this. So I'm going to copy from here because I don't want to type everything. If you want to type it, of course, you can pause the video and type it if you wish. But this export is going to be equal to just that. So let me just delete all of this. And I told you this was going to be much simpler than the other one. So this is the only thing we need to do. all of this, it's going to be exports. Sorry for this. All right. So this is what we need to do. This is going to act as a middleware, and this function will do all the checking for us. Now, all of these keys are the keys for our project, so I just cannot leave this the way it is. So if you remember this URL, it's the same pretty much we had right here at the bottom when we do the get JWT set. So I'm going to copy this one. It's pretty much the same URL, and I'm going to replace it. Now, then it says we need an audience and we need an issuer. So on this one, this is just the URL of our project. HTTPS, whatever, and we need to finish with a /. And then the audience, it's going to be pretty much the client ID. So let me just put it right here, client ID. So where can we get the client ID? If you go all the way to the top on the Auth, right here, you get the client ID. So I'm just going to copy again, and I'm going to replace it. All right. Now the algorithms are pretty much the same, RS256, and everything else just, stays the same. So now what we need to do, our middleware, of course, is done. The only thing we need to do is to use it. How can we use it? Okay, so I'm going to go to server. We are already requiring the serve auth. So now we make a reference to serve auth, but now what we get is an auth JWT. So I'm going to go and say auth JWT, and that's it. Now, of course, this is not going to really work. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. I'm going to say npm run dev, and I made a mistake with this. Let me see where's the mistake. JW key is our set. It's not defined. So let me just make sure. It says that this one, it's not required, and it's because I make a mistake. On the example, it says that it's requiring with this, and I'm using a different name. So I'm going to just use the same we get on the docs. All right. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to start again. npm run dev, and we should be okay. Right, so everything is good. So now, of course, we need to make the request to the same URL with the postman. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to send it. All right. And this is what we get. We get an error, but it's a good error. We get 401 unauthorized. So by default, you don't get unauthorized. You get, page not found, or server not working, or no response. You don't get just unauthorized out of the box. And this is because this one, it's saying that the token is incorrect. And why? Well, we have no token. We are on a fake environment. So we need to provide a token. We don't have a token in this one. The only place where we have a token is going to be our application, right? Okay, so this one is trying to access a token that does not exist. From within Postman, what we can do, we can add a token on the headers. So first, I'm going to go to our application. I'm going to do, just to be safe, I'll log out, and I'm going to log in again. I'm going to log in just to get a fresh token. So I'm going to go to log in and say Steve Madden, gmail.com, and I believe it was testing 1, 2, 3. All right, so I'm going to log in, and there we go. All right, so I'm going to go and just copy pretty much the whole token. Just going to copy it. All right, you will need to do the same, of course. So now we need to tell Postman that, we have a token. So if you go to the headers, you can add whatever information you want. So the way that the middleware works is that it's going to search for something called authorization. And the authorization is going to be the token. Now, if you pass it just like this, it's not going to work. The authorization is going to look for something that says var space and then the token. That's, the way it works. And this is actually pretty common. So now since this token, we know that this is correct, and we are doing var, and we do have a header, the request will get that information, that token will evaluate things, and will let us move forward. So let's give it a try. Gonna send, and now, of course, we get our JSON data back. So it's letting us pass, right? Because we have a correct token. So let me just move this down. We are entering here, and we are going to this first. Since we do have get a correct token, this one is going to say, okay, so I'm going to let the user pass. I'm going to call that next. So it's going to go here and let the user get the user JSON data. Pretty simple. So this one was much easier than the auth, of course. So I want to add one more thing before we go to the next one. Now, if the token is incorrect, let me just change one character. If the token is incorrect, what we get, it's a 400 unauthorized. So, we get just a response. And, the status, of course, is useful, but maybe since you're going to do this from your application, from our project, maybe you need a JSON response. Maybe you need a different response. So if you go to the Express JWT project, the very bottom, they give you an example of how to do error handling. So on this one, they give you a kind of a middleware, and it says that every time you get an error with that says unauthorized, you're going to send something else. So let me just copy all of this logic. If you want to do it, you can do it. You can do the same. And I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go to the server, and I'm going to add it at pretty much at the bottom of all the routes. Just going to put it right here. So on this one, what we are saying again is that on all the routes, whenever we get an authorized error, instead of sending that 401, we're gonna send a different response. Right now, we are sending that invalid token. We are just sending a string. But in my case, what I want to do, I just want to send an error, and I want to send invalid token. So I'm pretty much doing the same, but sending everything as a JSON response, and that's it. So I'm going to say invalid token. All right. So again, this one will apply to all the routes. So if we get that unauthorized, we're going to get that response instead. So I'm going to just comment everything. I'm going to run the server again. If not, nothing will be applied. And I get an error. I'm pretty sure I made a mistake with this. App, oh, of course. It says app use. Now, when you work with Express, the most common convention is that instead of naming server, you name the pretty much the whole Express, you name it app. We are kind of already doing app with next. That's why we use server. So the only thing we need to do is just change it to server. Oh, server. There we go. So now let's try to rebuild again. And there it goes. Good. So if I try again, instead of getting this response, I'm going to get a JSON response saying invalid token. So this is much better for us because we will catch everything from the client, right? We will catch that response and do whatever is that you want to do. Okay. So now what we're going to do on the next section, we're going to apply all this same logic. We're going to make a request, pass the bearer with the token and everything else, just to get some data from a restricted route. But we're going to do it from the client. We're going to do it from one of the pages. And maybe you're thinking, dude, this should be the same. Should be very simple. We just make an Axios request and that's it. Well, not really. It's not that simple. We need to make a few changes. Let's go to the next one and do the requests. Okay, so now let's try pretty much the same thing we did previously, but from the from the client, from our project. So I'm gonna go maybe to the index of users, and I'm just gonna try here. And if I go to the main index of users, this is the this is the place, and I'm gonna do a console log, and I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna remove that the script we get right here that we did on the previous section. Let me just go there and remove it. I forgot to remove it. Sorry for that. So I believe it was on the main layout, maybe? Yes, main layout. So I'm going to just remove it. You know that you can do this. So I'm going to save it. It's okay. Reload the application. And if I go to users, all right. So everything's good. So, okay. So we need to do pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to go to index. And I'm going to do just a component did mount and make an Axios request, right? That's what we need to do. So I'm going to import Axios from Axios, right? One less thing to do. And I'm going to go right here, since we have a class-based component, I'm going to do component did mount and just make a standard request. I'm going to say Axios, I'm going to do get. All right. Where do we want to go? Well, we want to go to /API and then users. I believe that was the URL, API users. Cool. So, okay, then of course, we are gonna get a response. So we get a response and we do something. And in this case, because we are just testing, I'm gonna console log the response.data. So what we should be getting back is this JSON. So of course, if I reload the application and try it again, we get a 401 unauthorized. Why is this? Well, again, we are making the request. Let me just go back here. We are making the request, but we are not passing the tokens. And remember that this serve auth, needs the tokens. How can we pass the token? Well, if you remember on the app auth, we've already included a library to get the cookies from the, to get the cookies from the browser. So we just need to do this. I'm just gonna copy all of this. I'm gonna go to index, and we need to do that var thing we did on the postman. So I'm gonna go here, and the way we do it in Axios is after the URL, we add the headers. So I'm gonna say headers, just like this, open a new object, and we need to pass the authorization. And this one, it's gonna be equal to a string. Remember that we need to add the bearer and everything else. So bearer at the beginning. All right, now what do we need to do? Well, we need to get the token from the cookies. Since we have that library, we can do it directly from here. So I'm gonna open and close, I'm gonna say cookies dot and get JSON. What do we need to do now? Well, we need to be passing the name of the cookie. I believe it was XJWT. Maybe not just like that. Let me just make sure. I'm going to go to application and XJWT. Good. Okay. So now, of course, now we should be getting the data, right? We just need to, we are passing the headers with the authorization and everything else. So if I go to console and reload the application, we should be getting, and we are getting it right here. Okay, so yeah, we are getting the JSON response. So very cool, very, very simple task. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back and we're gonna try to do the same thing, but from get initial props. So I don't want to do the, the fetching from here. I want to do it from get initial props. So, okay, so of course, we're going to get a couple problems, a couple issues, and of course, I'm going to tell you how to fix it. Since we're going to make a request on the get initial props, this one needs to be async, because again, we'll use async and await. So I'm going to create a variable where we're going to be hosting the response that we get from the server, which is, the JSON with the users. So I'm going to say that this variable is going to be user lists, or maybe users, because we have many users. And of course, we do a try and we do a catch. So catch, we will get an error if we get an error, and then we do a console error with the actual error. Okay, some stuff. So now, of course, I'm going to create a variable. This one is going to be response. So response. All right. And this one, of course, we need to use await. We're going to go to Axios. We do a get response. Where do we want to do it? Well, to API users. All right. Do we get headers? Yeah, because we need to be passing the token. So I'm going to go here, and it's just going to be, I'm going to copy the headers and make it prettier. All right. Okay, so we are still passing the authorization with the var and the actual cookie. Okay. So at the end, we're going to access this users lists, and we're going to say that this one is equal to the response.data we get back from the server. Makes sense. And at the end, whenever this is done, we will pass that property so we can inject it as props to this component. So at the end, we should be getting the same thing we were doing here, right? Makes sense. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to reload the application. And okay, so the first thing that is happening is that we are not getting a response with the object. And it's because it's failing. Now, if we go to the server and we inspect this, this is a console log that I have right here in the files. I will need to go and find it, but right now, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to scroll all the way up until we get compiling. And the first thing we get, it's connection refused. So we get two issues right here. We have two mistakes. The first one is that the application is trying to go to API users. Now remember that this runs on the server. So when we go to the server, we cannot, and I repeat, cannot use relative paths. We need to use absolute paths. So HTTP / localhost and then 3000. All right. So if I try it again and reload the application, let's get it one more time. And I'm going to do clear here and start the server again. And I'm gonna reload the application. Okay. Okay. So we still get out, we can, we don't get the object. Now, if I go right here and scroll all the way up one more time, let me just go until we get, there we go, almost done. Let me find it. Sorry for this. Okay. So it says using a browser only version super agent, whatever. So we get, just a weird message. And, it makes sense. Now, remember again, it's always, the same issue. We are running this on the server. We are not running this on the client. So what we are doing, since this code runs on the server, we are saying, dude, go and get the cookies from the browser. But if you remember, we don't have cookies because this runs on the server. We don't have the cookies. It's not a browser, it's the server. So we need a way to get the cookies from within the request on the server, right? Now, if you remember, we've already have something that does this. If we go to to app auth, and I scroll all the way down, when we do the is authenticated, we are running a function called getCooksFromRequest. So we already did a function that does that inside utils. We get the cookies from the actual request. Now, since on this one we do get access to the request, I'm gonna do it just like this. We could use the same function to get the cookies we want, right? Pretty simple. So again, we just need to reproduce this. I'm going to go all the way to the top. I'm just going to copy all of this. I'm going to go and paste that function we have inside utils. And this one is going to be ../. And let me just do it again, just to avoid mistakes. ../, we go to live, and we go to utils. All right. So now again, we need to run the same function. So let me just go all the way to the bottom. And I'm gonna copy this. Okay, so I'm gonna go to index, and I'm gonna create a variable. So I'm gonna host the variable right here. I'm gonna say request cook, or could be cookie or whatever. So now, of course, when the application runs, the server runs, we get the cookies inside here, right? And let's just give it a try. I'm gonna say console log, and I console log the request cookie, just to make sure, we get the cookies. So I'm going to reload the application, and we should be getting something right here. So let me see if I can find it. There we go. So we are getting the cookie, all right? So now what we need to do is just replace this with this, because this one runs on the server. So we will not get the same error message. So I'm going to uncomment this, and I'm going to say that instead of using that one, I want to use our function. All right. So if I reload the application, let me go here. It might take a second, but that's okay. So we are getting the users list. And of course, this happens inside props. Remember, we are doing this, that props on the actual component. But now, we are getting what we wanted. So very good.